Hey friends, welcome to the Tech Unlock podcast. I'm so glad you're here. This show aims to demystify tech careers and diversify the tech industry by giving you the keys to unlock your successful tech careers. I'm your host, Grace McJones. Let's jump right in. I'm so thrilled to have my guest with me on the show. And who else could you start a season 2 podcast season with? I'm so excited to have Angie Jones on the show. And some people might not know who you are, and I don't know how that's possible because you're literally everywhere that I look. But Angie is a senior developer advocate, and she is a Java champion. She's a bunch of things that is so incredible. And we're going to talk a lot about just your career and your expertise with test automation. So welcome to the show, Angie Jones. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks so much for having me, Grace.
Of course. And for those who don't know, I met Angie first on Twitter. And then I think we met in person at Afrotech last year and then at So I Speak Code. And I usually like sharing how I met people just to show like, hey, like you do have to network, you do have to reach out to people. And I was glad that when we met in person, you were the same person or even not better, because sometimes you meet people you either admire in person, you're like, whoa, they're totally different from what I thought. So I just like thank the Lord, she is even more than expected. And so I guess my question for you, you've told your journey and your story a lot of times, and you talked about how you really didn't know what you wanted to do, like, when you grew up, but you kind of like ended up studying computer science because of your dad. He nudged you into studying computer science because he knew tech was going to be a big thing, and then you did. But kind of walk us through, maybe after college you went to IBM, and how did you find your kind of like your groove in tech, because you're really specialized right now, like you have a lot of information on different tech concepts, but everyone knows you as a test automation person, as the Java person. How did you find what you were good at, or were you good at it, in the first place?
Yeah. So a lot of my past has been just kind of discovery and falling into things. So like you mentioned, I didn't know that tech as a career was even a thing. Um, and my father just suggested, oh, take a course. And I did, and like, oh, this is fun, and so that's how I got into coding. And then going into IBM, like, okay, I code. That's all I know. I code. What job can I get? And so when I interviewed there, I was interviewing for a developer role, and I got the job. But when you hire college grads, you usually hire them months before they actually start.
Right.
So I got an offer in maybe like April, and then my start date was June. So by then they had done a reorg. So the team that I was actually hired for was like, no more. And fortunately, they didn't just like throw me to the wolves. They were like, well, let's find you something else to do. There's like, well, there's this opportunity to do this test automation role. Now, I don't know anything about testing. Like, Grace, they didn't teach me anything about this in my CS program.
No, same. I was just telling you, like, we maybe spent 1 or 2 classes, but nothing really. So
Yeah, I had like zero training in this. And I'm like, okay, I don't know, but I just spent 4 years learning how to code. Do I get the code? And they're like, yes, this is a coding job. And I'm like, all right, whatever. As long as I'm making the same money and I get the code, whatever, that's fine. But I really, really enjoyed it. So I learned a lot from my colleagues about how to test software, how to think about different edge cases, not even edge cases, just scenarios. When we're developing software, we are such in this state of mind of building for this happy path. Like, we have a specific scenario in mind, like the person is going to do this and then this should occur. But people go against the grain, or they have various different situations and scenarios, right? And so, that allowed me to explore that and think more from the human side of things, which was fascinating. Like, this was probably more exciting than writing the code itself, was to think of like all of these different personas and how they might utilize the software and be able to drive the design and the development that way, to say, hey, we're not thinking about this valid case. Like, what if there's a person that needs to use this feature to do X? We don't
Yeah.
have that covered. It's like, oh, that's really good. So this allowed me to have like this bigger picture view of the application. And I was able to contribute so much to like the development and design, not by writing the code, but by just thinking of it in this way and being able to express my thoughts and opinions and concerns and get those things built into the product. And then I also get to write the code to like test out these scenarios. So automation, for those who don't know, or test automation specifically, is where you basically write scripts that mimic what the customers would do. So if the customer needs to buy a product from your site, then you mimic that entire thing. Like, so you write the code where the customer comes to your application, they maybe search for a specific product, they click on that product, they add it to the cart, maybe they change the quantity and the color and these attributes, they add it to the cart, now they want to go to the cart, they want to check out. So all of this is automated. It's really cool to watch. I show it to people, like my husband and stuff sometimes, like, look at that browser, it's just moving on its own. And it's almost like a little ghost kind of
Yeah.
controlling the browser. So that's what automation is.
I love hearing that story because, you painted a picture of how you were kind of thrown into a situation where you didn't really know what to expect, but then you kind of gave yourself to it to learn more about it. And then through that, trying something new, trying something different, even if you didn't have like the background for it in a sense. Yeah, you had your CS degree, but you were willing to try, right? And put in the
Mm-hmm.
work to learn something, which is what I think technology is all about, because it's always evolving, it's always changing. And we have to have the mindset of like being willing to try something new, trying to be uncomfortable so that we can keep moving forward. So that's such a powerful story. So when it comes to, testing, what do people get wrong? Like what do they, either mistakes that they make or even things that they overlook sometimes?
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually did a poll on Twitter this week, maybe, and I was asking who has like dedicated testers on their team to test the
Hmm.
software. And the majority answered that they do not, which
Wow.
was really interesting to me. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it was just interesting because I've worked so I worked at automation most of my career. I have done some stints in development, and
Hmm.
I work on side projects like building apps and stuff on the side. So I have both this like dedicated tester experience as well as developer experience. And I know for myself, my mind state is different in both of
Mm.
those cases. Like when I'm building, I'm not thinking of all of these personas and stuff. It's like, I got to get this stuff to work.
Right.
Look, the happy path don't work. Don't ask me
Yeah.
about any other paths. And then once you get it done, you're just so relieved and you just want to be done with it. And so I know for a fact I'm not testing my stuff as well as someone who was like, I didn't write this. I'm not in love with it. I'm not married to it. I'm just coming at this from a different angle, multiple different angles. It's just a different mindset. So it's really fascinating to have like someone who is dedicated to that on the team versus having people try to do it all. And I often like and some engineers will disagree with this, but I often think management is trying to get like a 2-for-1 special here.
Right.
Like yes, we all should test our code.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely, but there's a limit to that. Like, I can write some unit tests for my stuff, right? But if you also expect me to write some integration tests and write some end-to-end tests and think of all of these different personas and do security testing and accessibility testing and localization test, like, really? Like, that's a
That's too
lot.
much. Yeah.
And you want this done in like 3 days. Like, come on here.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest misconception, is that one person can do like all of this in an
Mhm.
efficient way. Like, yes, as developers, absolutely we should test our code, but let's not feel like that should be the end all be all. I think there's definitely a need for dedicated experts to really dig into it.
So, what are some, skill sets, needed in terms of trying to kind of be a test automation engineer or developer? Like, what are some things that if someone's listening right now, say, wow, this sounds really fascinating. Like, how can I get into this? What would be your advice?
Yeah. Okay, so you need creativity. I would say that's like the number one thing. Like, you just
Love
need to
that.
be, yeah, you need to be like
Yeah.
able to imagine. I've read one article that I thought was so good. It was called soap opera driven testing or something,
Okay.
where they basically, if they needed to test some features, they would create like these different characters and personas or whatever, and add some drama and some mix into it, because people are messy, right? People, the way they use your
That's facts. That's
application,
true.
it's just true.
Yeah.
The bugs that come in from the field, you're like, why would anybody do that? And they have valid cases of why they've done that. So
Mhm.
I think just to be able to step outside of yourself, so creativity as well as empathy.
Mm.
So being able to like put yourself in other people's shoes and consider like what they might need from your product. Those are like the two main things. Also, really helpful, especially if you want to do the test automation part, you have to have like the coding chops as well. So that's
Mhm.
another misconception where people will say, oh, you can go into testing as like a stepping stone into development. Um, and I think that that's shortchanging the testing role, especially the test
Yeah.
automation role. I have to write more code than my production developers most of the time, right? If you really think about it, they write this much code for the feature. I have
Mhm.
to write this much code for all of these different personas I've come up with to exercise that one feature, right? So not only that, my my skill set has to be broader. For example, if our application is supported on web and on Android, we got an Android app, we got an iOS app or whatever, we're going to hire developers, someone who specializes in iOS, right?
Right.
So they might do like Objective C or Swift. We're going to hire somebody who specializes in Android development. So they might use Kotlin or Java. And we're going to hire someone who's a front end dev for the web. So they're JavaScript and CSS and stuff. I have to support all of these things, which
Oof.
means I need to know all of that. I have to write
Wow.
in Swift, and then I might have to switch over in that same day and write in Java. And then I might have to switch over and write in JavaScript. And then I got to do some back end stuff as well, right? So I'll
Mhm.
need to work with some APIs and some databases. I need to know SQL. So the test automation skill set is like broader than any of those niches, and it's kind of comical that people feel like, oh, this could be my stepping stone to get into like development. Like, child, you're already a developer.
Don't play yourself. Don't play
Don't play
yourself. It's not
yourself.
easy. Yeah. I love that honesty because that's not a conversation that I hear often or even at all. And so I think that being honest and upfront, yeah, it might be difficult, but it is, it broadens your skill set and you do have more to offer as an individual, even moving forward in your career. What are some types of testing, that people should be aware of in terms of, I know you mentioned some earlier on, but what are like maybe the top 5 common, was it performance testing, loading?
Yeah.
What are some form of testing?
The top one that I think everyone should know, if you don't learn any of the others, is unit testing.
Okay.
And there's multiple ways you can do this. Some people use like the TDD, which is test driven development approach, where they write their test first before they write the code. So your
Mhm.
test is driving what you develop. And this helps you to not make mistakes, or as many mistakes at least, because you have the test already, so you know what it should do. It also helps you to minimize the amount of code that you write. So you're not over engineering your solution, just enough to get that test to pass. So that's a really good approach, but it gets mixed reviews because developers don't like to write tests, and they want to just start with the feature. So to start with the test first, they kind of feel like it's a waste of time.
Mhm.
But some people swear by it. So try it out, see what you like. But even if you don't do the TDD approach, writing your unit test after you write the feature, that's perfectly fine as well. Just write some tests, right? So that's the number one type you should learn. Other types of testing, like if you have a web app, or any type of GUI interface, whether that be a mobile app or a web app, you definitely should do some UI testing as well. Um, Accessibility is becoming very big right
Yes.
now. So that's a really hot market. If anyone is looking like, what should I get into? Explore accessibility, because we don't know how to do this. We don't
That's
know how to
true.
do it. And it's very important to be inclusive to everyone. And there's all sorts of disabilities that people have. I'm still learning this stuff myself. I'm definitely not an expert at all in it.
Mhm.
But I know that it's something that I need as a developer and as a tester. And so if anyone is interested in looking into that, that's a really, really good area to go into. And then security is always hot as well. So uh, again, when we're developing our features, we're just trying to get that sucker to work. Like, it's
Yeah.
hard to think of like all of these. I'm thinking of these different soap opera characters. I'm thinking of, and one of those characters is the hacker, right?
Mhm.
So one of them is the hacker. The hacker is trying to invade your software. So that determines how you build that software. What are the measures you're going to put into place? So it's a really good idea to have like this testing mindset while you're developing, even if you're not specifically writing the test for them, just to have it in the back of your mind. And that's helped me so much as a developer. So whenever I'm doing my dev projects, even though I'm not the best tester ever when I'm in that mode,
Mhm.
it still helps me because I'm thinking about, okay, I got Sally Sue, and I got Billy Bob, and then I got Hacker Hank, and and that, okay, I better put something here, and I better put
Mhm.
something there.
Yeah, I love how you humanize it. And, we talked about earlier the skills that is needed. And it's like empathy, like putting yourself in the user's shoe, or the people who are going to use that application, right? Or that software. And I think humanizing your product helps you to say, hey, we haven't actually tested the scenario. How about if we try this? Or even you talked about accessibility. What if someone is blind? Or what if someone doesn't have an arm? Like, how would they use your product or services?
Hmm.
And I think that the more conscious people are about those users, the more we can continue to build better products and better services for our customers. And so kind of shifting gears now to talk about your career, like, you're definitely one of the most accomplished, person that I know, from having different over. I know you have probably over 25 patents. Is that true from IBM?
Yes.
I'm just like an inventor. Whoa, like, what is this? You were recently named a Java champion, which is incredible. Congrats again.
Thank you.
And you've just done so much. And I wanted to know, have you ever come across any failures during your careers, or even face rejection, and how are you able to overcome it? Because I feel like a lot of times we just see the highlight reels of people's lives and their profession, which is great because it's definitely inspiring.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with the lows, when you go through those times?
Yeah. I think that no company is perfect, right? So
Mhm.
I've definitely had instances where I've not felt valued or appreciated, or it felt like people were actively working against me. Um, and being a minority, like that kind of stuff really sticks with you because you're always wondering, like, are they treating me like this because I'm a woman? Are they treating me like this because I'm black? Do they think I'm inferior to them? You just always have these little nagging thoughts in the back of your head. I remember, like, early in my career, it was difficult for me. I suffered with imposter syndrome, especially coming into this field, right? So
Mhm.
I said to you, I didn't know anything about this stuff. I didn't know anything about computers. I didn't have a computer when I was 5. I wasn't like building my first
You
game
weren't
when I was
coding in your
7.
dreams.
I was not coding in my dreams or anything like that. And most people, they experience that, other people around them have that when they go to college.
Right.
But for me, I went to an HBCU, a historically black college, and so my experience was much different than other people I've talked to. None of us in the class had that experience where we were coding since we were 5. Like, so we were all on the same playing field, which made it a nice learning environment, actually. So, no one felt incompetent, no one felt inferior or intimidated. But okay, then I go into the real
Real
world
world. Mm-hmm.
of IBM, and
Stuff hit
it's
the fan, right?
like, okay, nobody looks like me anymore.
Ooh.
And so I was nervous, I was scared, like, okay, here I am, like someone who just started coding at the age of 18, coming from this black college,
Mm.
and am I good enough? So I went in, and I would just be like really quiet. I would like give me my assignments and stuff, and I'll do my work, but I'm not talking a whole lot. I'm not sharing ideas or anything like this. In the meetings, I'm like mute, because I don't know about you, Grace, but I grew up, and a lot of black people that I know grew up, and our parents would tell us, like, don't go making a lot of noise in these people's offices now.
Mhm.
Just
You're
go
respectful.
keep your head
Mhm.
low, do your work, go on home or whatever. And so I was kind of following that advice, and that was not working for me. Because then, like, you start getting feedback like, oh, you're not engaged, and
Mhm.
people think that you're intimidating, or they think you don't like them, and it's just like, oh, okay.
Wow.
So I got like a bad review,
Oh
Grace, and
no.
I know, and it's like, my whole life I've gotten, good grades and stuff like that. And now I get
Yeah.
in corporate America and I'm getting a bad review. And, that stung. And it's like, okay, is it that I don't belong? Is this too much
Mhm.
for me? Or what? So I had to take a step back and just look at what's the feedback here. There's nothing here about my work, right? No one is saying you don't complete your test. No one is saying your work is not of high quality. The feedback is very social. It's that, people don't feel like you're engaging or that you're present. Okay, all right, let's work on that a little bit. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to share my ideas, Grace. They might sound stupid. They're totally different than what these guys are saying in this meeting. So it's really out there. But if I don't open my mouth, I'm going to get another bad review. So I just got to
Right.
open my mouth with my silly ideas. And when I started opening my mouth, Grace, people were like, that's a
Who
really,
is she?
yeah, that's a really good idea. Like,
Wow.
wow, that's really innovative. That's how I got my patents, Grace. like I wouldn't have thought to patent this stuff. Like it's just an idea. People
Mm.
are like, wow, that's really innovative, that's really unique, that's really creative or whatever. And maybe we should look at patenting that. And that's how I got into inventing things. Like, oh, y'all like that? Oh, I got a whole bunch of ideas. Like, okay.
That is
And
amazing.
so I started becoming more vocal. And what I learned is my differences are my superpowers. Like, it's
Yes.
not that I'm so smart or anything like that, but I'm so different than the rest of these people that's building this software. My background is different. My life experiences are different. So I bring like this different perspective that other people may have not considered before.
That is so powerful because I feel like, and something you said earlier on, as a minority or even a double minority as a Black woman, whenever you're in those spaces where you do stick out, you're like, okay, like, do I deserve to be here? Or someone called this the Black imposter syndrome, right? Like, am I here because, like, I'm Black, I'm the diverse hire, or I might hear because of my skills and my talents. And it's kind of like this inner war that we have in our mind, in regardless of what level you're in, because it's just the way the system is, or the environment, like we live in tech. But I love that even when you got that feedback, you were able to kind of take a step back and not take it as personal, and saw it as an opportunity to grow, and kind of like be better. And it's like, when you took that step, look at all the amazing things that came through. And I love that, because sometimes we can be so caught up in our own head of like, okay, I need to fix this, I need to do this. And it's like not having that honest feedback. And I love that, it wasn't about your work or how you deliver. It's more about something that you could, fix or improve. And doing that, sharing your ideas, which I know a lot of, not even just, minorities, but even young people struggle with, because it's like, oh, they're not going to listen to me. Like, what do I know? Like, I'm only like a first year or a second year. This person
Yeah.
has 10 years or 20 years of experience, or a 10x engineer, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Um, and and it's like, no, like you said, your experience, your background, like, that's your superpower, that's what makes you different. And being able to share that, is so needed, because that's why, they hired you too, because it's like you have a different perspective that you can bring into solving the problems that that company or that team is facing. So I love you saying like, hey, speak up, share your ideas. I know some people get scared, like, what if someone steals them? Like, don't worry about that, just share it. You never know what good can come out of it. And so what are your other, I guess, tips on, you know, kind of like navigating imposter syndrome? And I think that you have a workshop on this. I'm not sure, or you've talked about this before in the past, but for those who are listening, and are struggling with this imposter syndrome, like, what are some tips that can help them overcome it?
Yeah, I think I do have a workshop on this. I think the first thing to consider is that a lot of your heroes have this as well. And for some reason, that's really comforting to people, because it's like, no, she's not an imposter. He's not an imposter. I know that
Yeah.
they're dope. And so if they feel like that, then maybe my imposter syndrome is lying to me as well, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's the first step, like realizing it's not just you. Like a lot of people, your heroes, very, very accomplished people, feel like this. I use a quote from Maya Angelou where she had written like 11 books, and she's like, oh, I have to put out my 12th one. This might be the one where they discover I'm a big phony, you know? And it's
Wow.
like, Maya Angelou, you're no phony, you know?
Right.
And so it's like, well, that same voice that's telling her she's a phony is the one that's in my ear. And that voice is a
Mhm.
liar, you know?
Yeah.
Some of the tips that I use if I'm ever feeling down, or I like, oh no, I've not done enough or whatever. Here's one quick one you can do. I want you to take a timer and get yourself a pencil, a pen. I want it in ink. Get yourself a pen, get yourself a piece of paper, and your timer on your phone if you want to, right? You set that timer for 2 minutes. And then I want you to take those 2 minutes to write 10 accomplishments you've made. I don't care if it's from the first grade or if it was
That's
last.
the first grade. I can't even
Pull them out,
remember.
pull it, pull it out, pull it out. My husband always says, "Oh, I learned to ride a bike when I was 3." He's always like
There you
boasting
go.
about that.
That's one.
Put that on your paper, you know. All right, so give yourself 10. Now, after the 2 minutes, I want you to look at that list. And here's the thing: you only got 2 minutes. You're looking at that timer going. You don't have time to listen to imposter syndrome. So it's a way to
Mhm.
cheat it before it could even talk to you. It's like, shut up, I'm trying to get my list together. And
Right.
even if you don't get 10, if you have 3, that's 3 more than you thought about two
Mm.
minutes ago, you know? And you celebrate those things there and keep it. I keep that. I also keep, anytime someone says something nice about me or my work, I will keep it in like a little folder, and then I will read over this stuff. If I'm having a bad day, if I'm feeling down, I feel like, oh, I can't do it. Oh, and I'll look through that, and it just lifts me up, you know. And it's other people saying it. It's not me
Hyping
saying
yourself
it.
up.
It's not like my husband who loves me. It's other strangers who are like, you helped me with this, or you did this thing great. And it's like, all of these people wouldn't be lying. They're not all in cahoots with Mr. Imposter Syndrome. So am I going to believe this whole group of people, or I'm going to believe this little negative voice that's trying to get me down?
Wow, I love that so much. It's something so simple, but then again, the mental like boost that it can give you, because I think
Mm,
we forget. That's the thing. We enter this like mode of just like, okay, like I haven't done enough, especially when we compare our work to others or even our careers to others, where it's like I should be here by now, or I should have this job by now. And we forget everything else that we've accomplished, and it's easy to get stuck in that mindset. And so I love that that's so practical. Like, yo, just use pen, and paper. Put the pen to the paper,
yes.
and write down those things that we've done before, because if we're able to do it before, we can do it again. And so I love how practical that is. So thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
um and you have such a big personal brand built online and offline. You were an international speaker. How many times did you travel last year? I don't know if you remember. Like, you
A lot.
a lot. Because every
Google
time.
said, Google sends me my updates on
Mhm.
travel, and they told me I traveled the length of the world 6 times last year.
6 times.
Yeah, they're like, you've been around the world 6 times in 2019.
Oh man, I'm sure that's like complete opposite from 2020.
Oh
Just
God, yeah.
being. Oh man, that's incredible. And so yeah, you speak often, even now, like virtual, workshops or presentations. Every time I look at your Twitter, I'm like, Angie's onto something, another conference. That's awesome. So you have this huge online presence, and do you think that has helped your career in terms of like leveling up? And do you think other technologists or developers should invest in having a personal brand online?
Depends on what your goals is. So I know for a fact it's been extremely helpful for me. It's literally changed my entire life. Uh,
Wow.
so before, I would work in my little office, and I'm doing good stuff, but it's scoped to that. My
Mhm.
impact now is worldwide. So I've still focused on test automation, but my role now is a developer advocate, and what that means is I'm helping developers around the world to do their jobs better.
Mm.
So I'm doing the talks, the writing the blog posts, the workshops, the courses, all of this stuff in an effort to help other developers level up. Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So, as you and I talked about a little while ago, testing is not something that we're taught when we're, in school, or even if you're learning on your own or at a boot camp. They're focusing on the development piece of that, and not how do you test this stuff to make sure that it works correctly. And so that's where I come in and try to help. It's not a one company problem, it's an industry
Industry wide.
problem. And
Yeah.
I feel like my skill set and my exposure have put me in a position where I can't be boxed into one team or one company anymore. Like,
Mhm.
I need to spread this to this company and that company and all the companies, and doing that, that was my goal. So I never had this goal of like, oh, I'm going to be traveling around the world 6 times a year. My goal was I want to speak at a couple of conferences, and kind of spread my knowledge, things I've learned over the years.
Mhm.
And doing that, anytime I speak somewhere, it just opens more and more doors. And so, you'll speak, someone at some company will see that, and it's like, my company has this problem. Can you come in and like help us? And so now it's not that I just work for my startup. Like, I'm going into like, uh, you know, Disney and Salesforce and Amazon and like all of these big major companies, Twitter and the works. And I'm going in and helping those teams and teaching those engineers
Mhm.
how to write better code. And so it's been very rewarding, and it's also just opened more and more doors. So I don't even like, I don't know the last time I've updated my resume. Like, I don't seek jobs anymore. People come to me and like, hey, we want to hire you. And it's not like some recruiter. This is like some CTO or some CEO who knows Angie Jones. Like, how do you know me? You're the CEO of this big, huge company. It's like, yeah, I know you. I know your work, and I need you to come work here.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm at now in my career, and it's fascinating. Like, and when I think about that from where I started, like the person who was scared to speak up in the meeting, and now it's like CEO in some other country is like, I need you to come, you specifically, you come and help us do X, Y, and Z. It's amazing. It's a fairy tale story. So I attribute a lot of that just to my working out loud, just me
Mm.
sharing, like, what have I learned over my career? Here's what I've learned. And I try not to never, ever be like too teachy. It's
Mhm.
more like, here's my experience. Here's some obstacles I've run into. Here are ways I've solved them. And, tweak them as you will for your environment and your culture. But it's just a sharing.
Yeah, you are definitely one of the most, accomplished people that I know, but yet so humble and so generous with, your information, your expertise. You're always willing to help others. And every time I look on Twitter, it's like, Angie's helping someone or she's sharing information that's, definitely so usable and so needed. And, even with I know for me coming on, it was hard to like, okay, where are the other like black women in tech who are doing stuff? And I think by following you and you highlighting their voices also, I'm like, oh wow, like this is awesome. There are like kind of like more of us, even though we need more. It is just so amazing how you amplify the voice of others and uplift them. And I think we need more of that in technology. And something that you said, of, the opportunities that you have now, like it's kind of like night and day from when you first started in your career to where you are now. And obviously that took time to grow. And so for people who are looking into getting into the tech industry, whether it's, being an engineer, a coder, or maybe someone UI, UX design, or even research, what are your top three tips that you would give them, knowing that we're in a pandemic and people are kind of working remote, there are layoffs, a lot of things happening. What are things they can do to kind of like stand out, during the job search process?
Yeah. So whatever role you're going for, um, you'll need to demonstrate some type of experience in that. And I know that's really hard because you're like, well, how do I get the experience if I don't get a
The
doggone
job, right?
job? It's
Mhm.
like, that is true. I know that's true. But the people who you're competing against, they're doing outside things. For example, building a portfolio. right? That's extremely important no matter what role you're doing, even if it's back end, if it's front end, if it's design, if it's testing, if it's whatever
Yeah.
you want to do, you need to show like some type of um, work that you've done in that space, even if not for a company. So ways I tell people to do that, like portfolio is probably like the biggest one. So think of side projects that you want to do, something fun, something that's not like incredibly difficult that you won't finish it, but still meaty enough that it's relevant and it impresses someone, right? So think of like I don't know, people try to do like, oh, I'm gonna make a to-do app. Do you really care about a to-do app? Like everybody has a to-do app in their portfolio. What's something different? What's something that you really like?
That's
What's one of
good.
your hobbies maybe, right? Build that. Build something that like supplements your hobby, because one, you care about it.
Mhm.
And so you're going to be more interested, more invested in it, and then two, you're going to be more proud of that, right? So that's one way. Another way is to contribute to some open source projects. So that's a great way to not only get experience, but now you're directly interacting with influential developers in the space, right? So maybe as opposed to like doing a bunch of different OS projects, maybe you find one that you really like. Again, one that you care about, something that's like in line with a hobby, a passion, or a technique or tool that you love to use or something like that, and start contributing to that project. And you can start off small, maybe start off helping with the documentation, because as you're learning how to use it,
Mm.
then some things are missing, right? So this is your avenue in. Okay, let me start out small just so I can get the process of working with Git and all of this stuff. And I'm just gonna fix this typo in the doc, or I'm gonna add a new paragraph, a new section in the doc. And then as you get familiar with that whole process of how they do the check-ins and the code reviews and all of that, you build your confidence up and you can start contributing to the code and stuff like this. And so as you're doing this, all of this is good stuff that you can then put on your resume, on your portfolio, to be able to showcase that you have some experience. And not only is it showing that you have the experience, but it's showing you have the initiative to do this on your own without a job. And I say this, I'm going to be very careful here because it makes some assumptions about people's time, and that you
Mm.
actually have the time to do this, which a lot of people do not, especially mid-pandemic where the kids are home, and
Right.
you know what I mean. So do your best. Do your
Mm.
best. I mean, and if that means you can only do a little bit, that's okay. Give yourself some forgiveness and some grace right now in the period that we're in.
Yeah, love that. That is so practical. And now we're going to switch gears quickly to a lightning round, which is
Okay.
just questions to get to know you a little bit better. So no pressure. This is the easiest for, I think.
All right.
I think you mentioned this earlier, but what is the biggest maybe misconception about you? Because you talked about the biggest misconception about your job, but about you, like
Mm.
online, what is the biggest misconception?
Oh, that's so hard, Grace.
Oh, dang, I should have started, a little bit, Um,
Um, I I don't know. I don't know. What's a misconception about me? I don't know. I'll
okay.
say I'll say I'll say about my job, and
Okay,
both
what
of
about your
them.
job?
The
Okay.
testing and the developer advocate role. I think a misconception is that neither of these are very technical roles, and they're
Mm,
both like extremely technical roles.
yeah,
Um,
awesome. What is the best career advice you've ever received?
network, network. That's open doors. That opens doors. Like you hear the saying, "It's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know," and
Mm.
that's so true, right?
Yeah,
Very true.
I plus one to that for sure. What's your favorite piece of technology right now?
I'm gonna be cheeky and say where I work now, Amplitude. I just really love the project. So it's uses machine learning to do visual testing, which is a different lane than what I've done before. So it's really fascinating.
Nice. What is something that brings you joy right now?
Cooking for my family.
Oh.
I usually travel so much that I don't get to do that.
Hmm.
And so now I'm able to like cook our meals every day and I really enjoy it.
That's so precious. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, if you weren't in technology, what would you be doing?
Maybe a chef?
Chef Angie, let's
Chef
go.
Angie.
I can totally see that because you always post the food on your Twitter. So
I
okay,
am,
all
especially.
right, let me see. Lay down some recipes for us. That's good. I can actually, yeah, I think I can see that. That's I love that. That's awesome. What is one thing most people don't know about you?
Most people don't know I own a fashion game. So this
Tell
is
us
something,
more.
yeah, this is like, it's called Diva Chicks,
Hmm.
Chix. And this is something that I developed and I own and maintain it myself. And it's a massive side project that I run.
Love that. We'll definitely have to check it out. Well, thank you so much, Angie, for being on the Tech Unlock podcast. I know I learned a lot from our conversation. Before we go, lastly, is there any thing you want us to support you with, or any resources you want to share? You've shared a lot of information. Where can users go to find you?
Yeah, so I blog about test automation strategies and techniques at angiejones.tech. Also, a lot about Java and stuff in there. So if you're a Java dev, definitely check that out. I also am the director of this free online platform called Test Automation University. So all of the courses are absolutely free and they're taught by industry experts on all sorts of things. So unit testing, API testing, uh, back end testing, front end testing, and all the different languages. So Java, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, Swift, mobile testing, all the things. So definitely check that out. It's a wonderful free resource.
Awesome. And there is one question that I had. What is the backstory to your Twitter name, Tech Girl 1908? I have a hunch about the 1908 because you went to HBCU, but I'm gonna let you say.
Yes. So 1908 is the year where the first Black Greek sorority
Uh-huh.
was founded in the United States, and it's called Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, in which I am privileged enough to be a member. So that's where the 1908 comes from.
That's awesome. Love that. I was like, huh, I always wonder, but then I was like, I think I see some sorority in here. And so
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah, let me add it up. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for being on the show. And if you listened and you were able to get something from this podcast, please feel free to tweet at us, and just share what you've learned either on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. We're always looking to continue this conversation. Hashtag Tech Unlocked. And yeah, thank you guys. And I'm so grateful to Angie. This was definitely a great way to start season 2. And yeah, I appreciate you, Angie. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.